What's good, people? It's Dan with the Corporate Thief Beats. You're checking out another beat making tutorial. Today's beat is a beat that's similar to that of Big Sean. You could also hear artists like Drake on it, or you could hear artists like Bryson Tiller on it. It's kind of a really dark 808 feel. It kind of reminds me of Big Sean's kind of music that was on the album that he did a while ago that had the song Blessed on it. It just has that vibe to it. And I think that's where I kind of got the inspiration for. Also, maybe the drums on some of the trap, really heavy trap songs that Bryson Tiller raps on as well. But more listening to it, I can hear Big Sean on it. It just has that kind of Big Sean kind of very clear vocal in it. Because this is like a solo kind of Big Sean type beat. And I'll go through the same format as I do as always, intro, verse, chorus, and we'll just kind of break down each section and see what I've been using and maybe looking into how I actually created the MIDI, etc., and what plugins I've been using, etc. Um, we'll start off with the intro and we'll just hear what little synth kind of starts off the beat. So this is the intro, and I'll play a little bit of the verse. Okay, that's the intro, and it kind of leaked into a little bit of the verse. Let's see what the very first few instruments are. So the very one is an instrument called the Four Talkies. It's in the ESX24 sampler. As you can see, it's heavy with plugins on there. I usually very rarely do that. I must be trying to go for some kind of weird kind of sound when I start to really stack plugins onto individual instruments. A lot of the time I bust all these out because I usually like to mix the instruments natural sound with the wet sound of the plugins. But this time I seem to have um, put in a lot of plugins, a lot of effects on this particular instrument. And we'll just kind of A/B test them, see what the difference is. So this is the original one that I have that's mixed. It's been EQ'd. As you can see, I cut a lot below 200 hertz. There's a big, massive scoop at around 300 to 500 hertz, and then a little bit of the highs. We'll just see what that sounds like. There's some channel EQ, compression, some vibrato and delay, and I busted out to some external reverbs as well. It's a very low synth. It's kind of this weird it's like a Western kind of piano sound. It's kind of weird. It has a very weird sound to it. I have it low in the mix as well. It's not very high in the mix. And we'll just hear without any of the plugins. We'll just take a look at the MIDI first. So the MIDI is just me playing this out. Not perfectly, so it's just, as you can see, there's random velocities. It's not very quantized. It's a bit scattered because I actually played this, but because the instrument is so delayed, it actually sounds well together. And it's just a simple chord and a simple up and down scale melody. It's just simple chords, nothing crazy. Okay, don't want to make it out like it's anything special, but it's the sound that gives it that creepiness. Okay, and we'll just see what it sounds like if we take off all these kind of effects off it and see what it sounds like without it. We're not getting anything. Oh, sorry. I know why. Okay. And sounds just like a regular piano. It's a bit boring. It's a bit too realistic to use. It doesn't have any uniqueness, so we'll just play the original. And we'll just play the original without any effects. Actually, you can hear my inconsistencies in the piano there so much, but when you got a lot of delay on the effects, playing it a little bit imperfect kind of adds to the authenticity of the track. It's called Before Talkies, and you can get that in the ESX. It's a grand piano, and I just kind of bend it around with some effects. That's all, nothing crazy, and we'll move on from there. And next one is the same chord structure again. Same chord structure again, but this time we're playing it on a transistor radio piano. And I didn't play that out again, I just copied the original one that I did with Before Talkies and just kind of tweaked it. As you can see, it's kind of got that transistor radio kind of low pass filter on it, and anything below 500 Hertz is actually cut off because I don't want any low end going in. It's got tape delay, limiter, EQ on it, compression on it, everything is on that. Now we'll just see what those two sounds sound like without their effects to see if there's any difference. We'll just mute all the effects on this one and see what it sounds like. Again, it sounds like a boring piano. And you can hear the difference between it. These two sounds together sound really well together, but the two piano sounds without the effects sound kind of a bit basic. And there's a nice little ring to the reverb in there as well. It's not too aggressive with the reverb, but there's a nice ring to it. You might think it sounds still a bit spacious, a bit too quiet. The 808 and a lot of the drums, because it's going to be a very kind of modern trap type beat later on in the verse, you're going to fill that void because the drums are a lot busier in that section. We'll just come down to the Ghost piano. Again, it's the same MIDI, copy and paste. And this is more of a normal piano, I think. No. Again, this is a very heavy delayed piano. I've cut anything below 200 Hertz. I've scooped out a little bit at about 780 K or 780 Hertz, and I boosted at 1K to kind of brighten the highs just a little bit. It's nothing spectacular, but again, when you add in with the rest of the sounds, just continuously layering up that piano, but still keeping a lot of the lows out and kind of pushing the boundaries with the highs as well, and kind of just finding that unique kind of layer to it. Like if you listen to that on its own, it sounds a bit. There's a nice shimmering to the delay on that section. 1 second, we'll just see what kind of delay is on that. Let's see what delay is on that. And you can see we've got quarter notes on that delay, and it has just a nice effect to it. 1 second, we'll just see. Bring that down. See, once you start taking off those effects, you get the natural piano come through again, but I didn't want that natural piano. But the delay actually really does add to it. The amp, I think, is what gives it that kind of ghost effect. If I take off the amp, actually that's a pretty nice sound as well, but the delay is a bit scattered then. It's a bit tighter with the delay, with the amp on. It's actually a nice sound to that, actually. But that's not the sound that I chose. And see the way through experimentation you can eventually find actually newer sounds that you could use in a future beat. And it would have been a good idea there to kind of just save that, but I'll come back to it another time. I'm sure that's what we all say. Again, this is more of a pad sound following the transitions from the chord progression. It's a very underwater, muffled sound. It's a little bit more low end kind of leaking in there. It's a very high mids. It's more of a mid section to kind of beef up the whole piano. So this one is kind of really adding the mids throughout the rest of it. And there's a thicker sound to it now with all those 4 pianos playing together. Okay. And the next one was metallic echoes. These are some effects that come in and out of the mix. It's kind of this is kind of the main melody, the main kind of riff that comes in and out of it. And it plays twice there, and then it kind of moves over to this section here, the blue voice plucks. We'll just drag that over. And that second section just duplicates the original riff. So we'll just play these two together. X out of that. Actually, when you hear those two sounds together, they gel so well. What I'm actually doing there in that little section there is I'm accentuating the second part of the riff by adding in those voice blocks. So the original metallic echoes is going to be the original riff, and then in certain sections I'm going to put in the voice block to kind of accentuate the riff. And altogether these sounds sound like this, okay? And each of those sounds has their own space within the mix. So it goes back to my original point in nearly every one of my beat making tutorials, is the sound selection is the key to creating or to mixing any beat. I don't think it's actually hard to make a beat. I think it's really hard to find sounds that are going to work together. A lot of the time I'm taking out stuff. Usually these beats, when I start them off, there's too much stuff in and I just kind of have to come back and and get down to just what is actually needed in the beat. Sometimes it's kind of hard because I might like a melody, but in the back of my head, I'm going like, can the rapper rap over this section because of that melody? Is it interfering with the song? Or is it going to interfere if the singer is going to sing on the hook? And it's kind of difficult to be in that situation with a producer because it might sound really good to you, but you might have to remove it because it's going to interfere with the key or the creativity of the artist. And that's your job as a music producer at the end of the day. Okay, and we're going to come into the verse here, play some of this here. So this is where the huge creativity is. I'm just going to play the kicks first. Okay, we're going to take a look at the kicks, and the kicks are a big section in this song now. And I'll just put in a snare so you can hear the difference. The snare sounds so off. It doesn't sound right at all. When the 808 kind of aggressively acts off this kick, you'll hear what it actually sounds like. It's actually weird to create beats like this because initially you think you've done something wrong, but when you play it off the 808, it just comes up with some crazy movement in this track. And it sounds so rigid at that section. It doesn't sound kind of like it's flowing. Just take a look at my EQ for my kick. Boosted a little at 70 hertz, boosted a little at 73, cut a little bit at 500, and put a little bit of the top skin on there as well at around 1300. Okay, and that's all I did for that kick. It's bussed out to parallel compression. That's how I compress a lot of my stuff. So I'm just using the dry sound and just a light EQ on that. Because that and it sounds pretty good with that section as well. If you just listen to the kick on its own again, it's pretty tight. And the snare is pretty, again, the snare is bussed out to some effects and some parallel compression. And I boosted a little bit at this section here at around 500 hertz because I just thought it made the snare pop through the mix a bit. The snare and the kick and the 808 kind of really create the movement in the song. Those initial instruments in the melody and the pianos and stuff are a bit boring and a bit metallic and a bit kind of, they're not that very interesting. It's the movement of the kick and the snare fighting the 808 is what's going to create this beat, and the interludes of the hats as well, which kind of is the whole recipe of a trap beat at the end of the day. 1 second now, we'll just see what comes in next. Open hat comes in next. I'll just give a look at that. And that's just a simple open hat. There's nothing really crazy about that. It just comes in at the end of every track. 1 second now. And there's 2 open hats there actually. So they're playing off each other. So one's going, it's kind of hitting and then it's closing at the same time on the snare. And just creating another movement. Another hat comes in this second. So there's a really, there's an aggressive open hat at the very start of nearly most of the verse. I'll just look at all of them together, and then a crash comes in as well at the start of this as well, just to kind of accentuate that you're getting into a new bar as well. It's a good kind of key indicator for a hip-hop artist as well. and then the 808 comes in. This is the movement of the track. Now this is this section that kind of brings it, gels it all together. And you can hear the way the 808 is fighting against this this kick drum. There is a second section of the 808. One second now. One second now. Just press that now. And it's a bend to move the kick up. One second now. We'll just see the pitch bend on that. I think I've done it actually in. I've done it in within the. Done it within the ESX. One second now. I think. I'll just see if I've done it within the ESX. Sometimes I can do it. You can do it within the pitch bend within the MIDI notes as well. Sometimes you can do pitch bend here and create an upstroke here. But I think this time, because I had a patch saved of an ESX, I'll show you where I did that. 1 second now. I'll just duplicate that and move this one down, and we'll take a look at the ESX, and you can see that I've pulled the glide up to the middle and I pulled the pitcher down low, just because you can hear without it, it doesn't really sound like anything. But if I put that back on again, you can hear it pulls it back up. That 808 gets pulled back into the mix, and that's just a slight effect. Just to let you know that I've cut anything below 2K, and I've cut some sections where my 808 or my kick drum is fighting with the 808. So they're really, it's a very stabby kind of attack, very hard attack 808 to fight against the kick drum and the snare and the hats. All together, they just kind of create the whole movement of the song. I'll just, there's nothing crazy there. I also just made sure that I tuned it perfectly as well, because I don't want it to be out of tune. And it's just a simple kick, an 808 patch that I have within the ESX sampler that I've saved. As you can see there's a little section there that has the 808 down. I'll just play that because we're getting into that anyway. And basically this is where the 808 and where I just kind of created the same thing again, and I pitched it down this time. I just want to see, no, I didn't do it with that. I did it again with the ESX, because there's multiple ways to skin a cat. 1 second now. And I'll just mute that and I'll play this one down just so you get a feel for what that. And you can hear the movement of it now. It's creating that kind of pull-push kind of feel to it. And I'll just go into the ESX just to show you how that, and you can see I just pulled the pitch up there so you can hear it. It pulls it up. I actually labeled them wrong, so that should be actually up. The other one should be down. I should be shot for that, but just in future I need to be more careful with what I label. But you can hear the effect of the pull push up and down kind of where it's fighting against drums. And we'll just play them all together. So I'll just play from this section, and you can hear the hat rolls coming in this section. And there's a little bit of a skip in the 808s there. 1 second, we'll just see all the MIDI together. See if that kind of makes it clearer. And in this little section here, I've kind of doubled up the kicks, but I've also matched it to the hi-hats. And there's a little bit of a skip there in the hi-hats. And that's just from playing around with it. Eventually, I probably thought there was too much in there, and I kind of kept pulling stuff out until it sounded good. And there's no perfect way to create those kind of stuff. You just have to feel it when you're playing it. And that's what I kind of came up with. A second now, we'll just see the sounds right in there. Don't need that one there. And in that section there is a little bit of a hi-hat there that just kind of plays a simple hi-hat as well. And the velocities are changed on it. So there's nothing crazy about that hi-hat either. It just kind of adds another flavor, and it kind of just pulls the mix, gels everything in, and kind of creates another transition. So it's because a lot of the instrumentation is repeated over and over again. A lot of the emphasis is placed on the drums and the 808s because it's at that kind of trap type music. There's a little pad sound in here just to kind of drone, just to kind of fill the void on this section. And there's a little bit of a tape delay on it as well, and an auto filter to make it slide around the mix, just to give it a wide stereo field. And the dizzy wheeler as well is there as well. And that they're both Synths in massive. And you can see that I've cut anything below 100 Hertz or 200 Hertz, and the same for this one. And just found a spot for it in the mix. And it just kind of adds another flavor on that section of, and that's not, I wouldn't really say that's the hook, maybe it is. Yeah, I would kind of say that's more of the hook section, and this is kind of an outro just before the verse to kick back into the verse. I kind of played around with the mix. There's kind of no perfect kind of, it's not going back into the hook straight away again either. Well, kind of is. This kind of would be the hook then, I think. It didn't seem like the hook. It doesn't really sound like a hook, but it isn't really that kind of a hook type beat anyway. It's really a rapper's type beat, a trap rapper's type beat, similar to Big Sean and Drake and kind of anything like that. But it has a nice darkness to it, but it has a very openness to it for a hip hop artist to rap on too. And you can hear the difference once I take off my effects chains as well over it, how clear the mix becomes and how thicker the mix becomes. And this is just some parallel compression. And I just kind of bust all my kicks out and my drums and my 808s out, because they're the crux of the beat. I usually compress them pretty hard, but I use the original dry mix into the kicks, into the parallel compression, and then do some light EQ again over it with the linear EQ, not to be drastic over it, but just to make sure that I'm getting rid of any kind of irritating sounds that I don't want in the mix. So that's how you make a Big Sean type beat. Hope you like that tutorial. Hope I kind of condensed it, but still gave you good value. And if there's anything else you need, leave some comments in the video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also, any kind of tools that I've been using, like the drums or anything like that, will be in the corresponding blog post and the video description. This is Dan. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care. Bye.